Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Rebecca Wright. I'm a partner here at JBecca. We're a Minneapolis-based marketing agency that focuses on connecting brands with best-in-class solutions for their acquisition and loyalty marketing. I'm joined with two of our great friends of JBecca, Aaron Grote, who is a digital strategist for Great Clips, and Blaine Britton, who's the VP of Data Solutions for Stirista, a San Antonio-based marketing agency. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey.
Hey, Rebecca. Thanks for having us.
You are welcome. So I know that my newsfeed has been dominated with headlines that have been talking about the death and demise of the third-party cookie. And I'm sure, like so many of the people who are joining us today, just really are yearning for more information about where we are, what the lay of the land is, how we got here, and really what's next for brands and marketers of all types and sizes. So I want to jump into that. I know that we have a lot of stuff to cover today. Before that, a couple of quick introductions. Aaron, I will start with you. So Aaron's been with Great Clips for almost 7 years and has worked with them to help develop their digital content strategy, including customer service and community management, their paid and organic search, paid social, display and video, analytics and reporting, and their marketing operations. And your most recent focus has been on creating a stable tool for integrations and processes around marketing operations and infrastructure. Did I get all of that?
Yeah, yep, you can do a lot in 7 years.
Yeah, yes, you can. Last but not least, I suppose not last when we only have two panelists, but Blaine, you've been with Stirista for over 6 years, and during your time there, you helped them launch their digital program, including their ad serving and data distribution. And as of late, your recent focus has shifted back toward their overall data solutions, including improving the identity graph product with PII connector keys and online identities. Is that fair to say?
That's it. That's why I get to wear the dress down shirt, because I'm a data guy. And yeah, I'm excited that everyone gets to tune in to listen to the data guy drone on about cookies, but I will do my best to make it entertaining and bring a little energy.
I feel like people might be more excited about this than you think. So let's just set the stage for our whole conversation. I'm going to ask both of you to help me understand, well, me and everyone who's watching, to understand in layman's terms, really kind of what it is that's happening and how it could potentially affect our marketing strategies moving forward. So I want to focus on a couple of different elements, and I'm hoping that maybe each of you can take one of them. Blaine, I'll start with you. If you could help just kind of set the stage for this, for the third-party cookie.
Yeah, so just breaking down kind of what's going on in layman's terms, I think best place to start for me is to borrow from the experts at Stirista, and my colleague Matthew Kenyon wrote a really good article called "Why Brands Should Celebrate the End of the Third-Party Cookie." It really does a great job breaking down the reason for the cookie's demise, but also outlining that there are some silver linings, legitimate silver linings to a cookieless world. So in layman's terms, and this is the best I could come up with, people are tired of feeling stalked when they're browsing the web, and it's manifested itself in a couple of ways. One is through the 2018 GDPR legislation, as well as Facebook turning off third-party audiences. Really the next iteration, and it's been steady, it hasn't been, this year we're doing this, it's been kind of a steady build. But the next major legislation that came through was California's CCPA, and that took place in 2020 and became enforceable in July. So it's really been an uneasy time, but similar to 2018, there is a bigger threat that we're facing, or an additional threat that we're facing that took place in 2020. And Believe it or not, it's not COVID-19. It's really iOS 14. And I'll be deferring to Aaron in a few minutes to talk about that. But the other thing is the Google announcement of the 2-year sunsetting of the cookie, the third-party cookie. So this really has our entire industry scrambling to find a suitable workaround. While there are many solutions that will emerge and have emerged, I think the industry as a whole really needs to be mindful of why we're in this position in the first place. And whatever that winning solution is, needs to address kind of the root cause of the problem. People aren't satisfied with the online experience. They want a better experience. And I liken it to what we see on a daily basis, millions of emails coming through. And most of them, there's not a personal touch, or maybe it's an over personal touch, but for that salesperson that hits the right notes on a cold email or cold call, we're willing to give them our time. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with our solution for the sunsetting of the third-party cookie.
Thank you so much for kind of setting the stage for us there. And you mentioned that we're going to let Aaron handle the part of the conversation that really developed for me as I was speaking to both of you in preparation for this webinar, which is the idea of how Apple's intentions to restrict the sharing of their users' personal information is kind of wound up in a very kind of intricate way with the idea of data and using data in order to connect with customers. So Aaron, because we can't really pull these two things apart, I'm wondering if you can just give us kind of an overview or a quick lay of the land when it comes to iOS 14 and your interpretation of what's happening right now with Apple privacy.
Yeah, definitely. Rebecca, that was a good way of laying it out, where it's a separate thing that's happening, but gosh, the extent to which it's affecting everything is pretty impressive. I would say in simplest terms, what Apple is doing right now is restricting the use of data to track users across apps like websites and companies. You know, if a company wants to use data to do that, whether that's for monetization, ad targeting, or measurement and attribution, that company has to get an opt-in from each user. And they have to use Apple's prompts and verbiage to do that. So that it's very straightforward, and I would say getting that opt-in is going to be a tough thing to do. And the scope of the data that Apple is restricting is huge too. It applies to all the data a company gets, whether it's from the device via the app or from the user via the app's interface, right? A lot of people are mistakenly thinking this only applies to the IDFA or device identifiers. But Apple's very clearly said this applies to other data types too, whether that's name, email, phone number that marketers are using as match keys to sync across, across companies. This is all under the jurisdiction, of what Apple's calling the ad tracking transparency framework. So because of the scope of that, in some ways, this is maybe even more sweeping than CCPA or even GDPR. And I think one of the reasons people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around it is that Apple really is acting like a sovereign nation here, right? And it's not going to be until CPRA, which is CCPA version 2, comes out, that the US at least is going to have anything as impactful as what Apple's doing here. And like Blaine said, and like you really eloquently kind of wrapped up, this is happening everywhere, and it'll only grow. And if I'm trying to kind of find a takeaway from all of this, it's that one thing to think about for marketers is the role of impressions where you can match data, where you can identify a user and connect it to business outcomes, right? The impressions where that's been true has been so so large, like the scale of it has been so large for us as marketers that we've kind of just come to see match capable impressions as just the default way to buy media.
Right.
And that's been working for us. As the share of impressions where we can match becomes smaller, sticking with that approach is probably going to unnecessarily restrict your total potential audience. And so if we start to think about impressions where you can match the impression with a person and with a business result. Maybe that's not necessarily, you're just using it to target and measure. You're using those match capable impressions to find the best ways to buy impressions that you can't match to. They become, scarcer, but they become more valuable.
I appreciate that kind of quick introduction. I know that this is such a complex issue, and data in general, there's so much unknown for what is to come in the future. So I appreciate you just helping us kind of level set and to understand exactly where we're at. This is really, I feel like, kind of the big news of the day when it comes to marketing, digital marketing, for all of us, for brands who are trying to respond to the world that we currently live in, and to be able to make decisions on how to move forward. But it really got me to thinking, like I said, like my news feed is currently inundated with all of these articles, and they're very excited in this being a big issue that feels like it's an all of a sudden kind of thing that's happening to the industry. So that made me wonder, really, how long have you been anticipating this shift, or how long has this been something that you guys have been thinking about? So Blaine, I wonder if you could take that first, and then Aaron, will have you respond.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the writing has been on the wall for some time now, probably even since before I started in the industry. There have been steps taken, but just as a company, I can say we are really trying to align ourselves with great partners and have made it a company-wide initiative to always ensure that we're providing some form of value for users or customers of the brands that we work with who are sharing their data with those customers. So even though we know these sweeping changes are coming, really, to me, it's always felt like we've been a year away from being a year away. However, with that in mind, we know things are changing and evolving rapidly. So what we're doing on a daily basis is taking steps that for whatever comes next, we're in the best possible position to help our clients and partners succeed with whatever challenges are thrown at us next. And some of them we can anticipate, some of them we don't anticipate, and we're scrambling. So it's kind of trying to find that balance of always keeping your finger on the pulse, but also working towards the larger goals that we know are coming. And I think the best we can hope for is providing value, and then let the chips fall as they may, or cards fall as they may.
Yeah. I think that it's funny for you, not funny, haha, but just from my perspective, that it would, that there are things about this that are still surprising you. I mean, if you can imagine a person who's not living and breathing data privacy and digital advertising day after day, this feels like a very unexpected, maybe not very unexpected, but just like an overwhelming shift of how we have to think about data, and how we have to think about just how we execute our day-to-day jobs and communicate with the public at large in regards to our brand and accomplishing our goals. But Aaron, I love your perspective on this whole idea of kind of, some of us are feeling like the train the train just caught up to us, and I would bet that you also have had an inkling that this was coming.
Yeah. In some ways, it has been for a long time, but I can also really I empathize with and understand the what feels like a really sudden impact too. Yeah. At a tactical level, a lot of people kind of in the weeds have been dealing with things like Safari's intelligent tracking prevention since 2017.
Sure.
And for the people really in the weeds, this has been a slow boil. When it comes to those tactical decisions. But it does feel like some of the changes happening, whether you're reading and trying to prepare for CPRA, or you're suddenly getting hit in the face with Apple's app tracking transparency, those are big enough that they are impacting entirely different decisions and entirely different decision makers, right? And so they're big enough where they're impacting strategy. And
Sure.
the people that have been making the tactical decisions, who have been living through the slow boil, it's not a surprise to them, but maybe it was their boss or their boss's boss who's now involved, and it does feel like a surprise. So I can get both perspectives.
Yeah, you keep saying slow boil. Are you are you referring to the fable of the toad in the water?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So for anyone who's joining us who isn't familiar with that, it's the story about the frog who jumps into the pot and he's happy and he's swimming and he's doing his thing, and all of a sudden the water gets, the heat underneath the pot gets turned on, and the frog is still doing his thing and enjoying his time until the water starts to boil. And you, I'm sure, can anticipate what happens next to the frog. So in order for us to all avoid an untimely demise, I just kind of keep going along the same school of thought. So talking about, like, you're talking about decision makers and tactical execution, and people at different levels kind of having an awareness of this happening. It's just really at different stages or different senses of awareness over the course of time. And I'm guessing that you have been thinking about this in relation to the things that you've been doing for Great Clips and developing their strategy, and how they go about connecting with their customers and prospects. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to, like, your current strategy and thinking about that in the context of first party versus third party data, and maybe just give us a tiny bit of insight into, into your world and what this has been like for you.
Sure. That's a good question. So the framework I kind of work in is, so I start with first party data, and I use that strategically. And then I use third party data when it's tactically useful, right? So even outside of talking about targeting and attribution, first party data lets us find, like, those strategic insights about what in our marketing or our operations converts and retains customers, and lets us wield our owned channels, like whether that's app messaging or email,
Sure.
in ways that grow our business. First party data can be used for lots of other things. It's enormously useful for measurement and attribution. Even in times when our targeting isn't based on first party data, we're using other signals or on platform optimizations. Using our first party data to send conversion signals to those platforms really accelerates how well it optimizes and how quickly it optimizes, how much money we're spending in an unoptimized way. So but then, of course, you can also use it for targeting itself. But in both of those two examples, whether it's attribution or targeting, that's where third party data really comes in for me. When you're deploying your first party data, it's only going to be so good. You're only going to have so much of it. And if you can find a trusted partner with high quality data, you can use that third party data to increase the rate at which your first party data is matching to your media activity. And that only speeds up and improves the total, like the ceiling of how much you can optimize towards those conversions. So that's third party data can help your first party data become even more valuable. But we're also, finding opportunities to deploy third party data in standalone ways, right? Whether that's location data or using, segmenting to narrow our total potential audience and make things perform well. The challenge is really around finding quality data like that you can trust, finding a partner who can help you deploy it well, but then doing that math around how much is this going to improve, this campaign's performance, and then how much does it cost, and is it worth us spending to improve the performance, or is it worth us spending more on media in a lower performing way, right?
Right.
You kind of have to do that calculation too.
So I feel like we're hitting on something that you might be able to speak to uniquely, and that's the idea of how campaign success is defined. So at Great Clips, you were really highly engaged with the whole brand strategy, which I think is really unique for a person who has a position like yourself, right? Who you're influencing and dictating or directing the overall digital strategy. But the way that I understand it, you're really kind of ingrained in the overall marketing strategy. So you're looking at the execution or the use of a lot of different more traditional media channels to help to drive campaign or business goals overall. So from what I understand, the success of a digital campaign is generally attributed to to clicks, right? And that's how performance is evaluated, success is defined. Can you elaborate a little bit about how Great Clips is measuring success or conversions for the brand? Maybe just give us a little bit of insight. I have a feeling that you're not just looking at clicks to say that a campaign or an effort was successful or not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Great Clips is very good at this. Like, there's a lot of excellent people that I work with that have taught me a lot. And what I think together we've been able to do is get down to business results, off-platform metrics. I think much more often and much more deeply than a lot of places have been able to. And for Great Clips, that's customer counts and to an extent sales. We're always trying to look at those and tie media activity or promotional activity to those things. And whether we're using year over year or period over period baselines, whether we're using geographic controls or even individual level controls when possible, we try to understand not just the volume that the percent change in volume or something. We're also trying to look at incrementality, like how much of that only happened because of the media or the promotion. And when you have that mindset, it's exactly like you described, Rebecca, where you're not just looking at channels as standalone things. You're looking at entire, promotions or programs or campaigns across media channels and being able to, attribute, how much more profit happened because you did this.
Thank you. I personally think that it's such a unique way that particular brand looks at the overall strategy and success of overall strategy, and obviously has been tremendously successful in deploying those things to grow to the size that they are. So thanks for giving us a little bit of insight into what that's been like. Blaine, I want to jump over to you kind of along the same lines of talking about like how first or third party data is used. I'm wondering if you might have a little bit of insight or can share what can brands do with their first party data, or what first party data might be necessary to activate against, especially if a brand has previously been relying on cookie-based targeting to execute or to drive business results, like Aaron was kind of just speaking to.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have to preface the response by saying that those big brands with really quality data still have plenty of options whenever you think about the walled gardens. So cookie going away is going to be a gear shift, but it's not going to be the end of marketing and advertising. It's the walled gardens like Facebook, Google, Amazon can take really just about any form of personally identifiable information or PII and match audiences. However, the challenge with walled gardens and why folks have pushed back against them is the amount of transparency that you get, and really that feedback loop of here's who I served an ad to, here's who converted, similar to what Aaron was talking about. You lose that a bit if you're working through the walled garden, because they bring the customers and make the rules. So we'll preface this statement by saying that I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, so I apologize. But
Okay, let's go.
I do think brands are really exceptional at capturing accurate data. That best helps them complete the task that the customer relies on them for. So for Great Clips, it's I need a phone number so I can check in for my haircut. Maybe an email works as well. I'll try a different brand because I know Aaron's our Great Clips expert, so I'll take Resy. They're another one where you work with them. It's in your best interest to give them an accurate phone number, because whenever you book that dinner reservation on Valentine's Day at J Prime, which is my wife's favorite steakhouse, you want to make sure that that thing is booked, and we're not going to be eating McDonald's, which is also delicious. You know, fast at McDonald's, but so that's why I say brands have this access, because users want to share accurate, personally identifiable information with them in exchange for that service. With Resy, it's the confirmation. But at the same time, those brands are not collecting the full breadth of information that they could. So Resy's going to have really good phone number, possibly email, but there's not a great reason for them to have my name and postal. They could ask for it, but don't really need it to fulfill what they're trying to do. And prior to now, having that fragmented data worked for a brand, because they could go to an onboarder who can fill in the gaps, or another data provider to append that information, or do a reverse append to add name and postal where I have email, or add phone number where I have name and postal, really any way you slice it. But I think the expectation was that whenever you pass this data through, you're going to get access to every user, because we have every piece of information to them with them. And in reality, there's a lot missing, even from the big data providers out there. The same. I've seen this mindset that, well, with cookies going away, let's shift our focus to mobile ad IDs. But going to keep coming back to my theme of, if people are moving away from cookies because of this bad and impersonal experience or creepiness factor, the next logical step would be the mobile ad IDs going away, any targeting that way. So I think my personal view is that mobile ad IDs are not long for this world. And I don't think that's my own personal opinion. In fact,
yeah, it looks like Aaron agrees. Yeah.
Matthew in his article said the same thing. So it's really getting back to some of those silver linings that are opening up as a result of these changes. It really is opening up new channels that brands can try. Maybe even some old channels that are new. So something like an email or household targeting, postal, direct mail, even IP, which was shunned for a number of years because it lost that personal touch. There is not a perfect solution, but I think really being able to bring all of the data fragments together and still understand the customer without extracting all of the information that you don't necessarily need to market to them. So continuing the Resy example, it's something where they have my mobile phone information or my cell phone number, and they can text me. But if they are exploring these additional channels, whether it's direct mail, email, even digital advertising, it would benefit them to really understand who I was and to kind of have a less fragmented view of the customer. Because let's say I have my Valentine's dinner and then next month I'm ready to opt out of Resy. What kind of message is it going to send to me or any other customer that I opted out, and then the next week I received a direct mail campaign from Resy? It's just kind of an odd thing. So if I opt out on one channel, I should be able to opt out across all channels. And that's what makes for an effective solution, is whenever you can honor a consumer's request across all channels. So while it seems like we're moving away from identity, I'd say we're moving more toward resolving that identity so we can pass on that value to the customer.
I think Blaine brought up a funny point that a thing that just normal people haven't been exposed to yet is the concept of remember to forget. And it actually takes a lot of data to comply with, you know, what the people are asking companies to do. So it's going to be an interesting time.
I agree. I know. I mean, whenever you want to go down a rabbit hole, I am here to listen. I think that just having this conversation with both of you, so many more questions and so much more for us to talk about. But I will try to keep us focused. I do want to touch on, Blaine, you said, you know, earlier in our conversation that, you know, even though that you knew that the day was coming, it always feels like we're a year away from being a year away. We were talking about cookies and, you know, the changes that Aaron was talking about for Apple that they're making to their privacy policies. The two of you have really painted this picture of a complete and fundamental shift in how advertising is targeted, right? And to stay on the right side of history, so to say, you know, so to speak. I mean, Aaron, you're making mention of something that I think is incredibly important, which is the awareness of the consumer. And you know, Blaine, you're kind of bringing into it this idea too that it's a complicated web of the data that's available that really is incredibly valuable, you know, that people would argue that should be owned by the people. But anyway, with just so much of this going on, what should or could, Blaine, in your perspective, brands be doing today to prepare for this future? So again, we have this, you know, Google making the announcement that will no longer be able to depend on the third-party cookie. Aaron's started or set up this conversation about Apple and how they're handling privacy, and all of it really leads to this idea that these two things that we're focusing on today are not the end, that they're just the beginning. So with that in mind, you know, the right side of history thing, Blaine, how can we, like, how do we move forward? How do we prepare for the inevitable that we don't know is coming, that we know is coming?
Yeah, so first off, you're making a dangerous proposition when you say you're okay with me going down rabbit holes, because I'm failed analogies, and so I'm not afraid to abort whenever one is going poorly. But I do think
that's great insight, Blaine.
A few ways to tackle the question, and what I always like to do is whenever I don't know the correct answer, I always consider the opposite. So avoid things that put you on the wrong side of history. So maybe that would be selling user data. We've seen a lot of companies get in trouble for that, either willingly selling or unwillingly having it shared for them. That's not good. Another thing would be over-serving ads, kind of that creepiness factor of I thought I bought these shoes and now they're still trying to sell me shoes, or I went on this trip and now I'm somehow getting playground equipment for my trip to Disneyland. So not to say that about any of those companies, just pure hypothetical. So
sure.
Thinking about that and then thinking what the opposite looks like, I think it's really a requirement to be a good steward of the data, meaning just because you have it, you don't have to use it. I have a phone number, I don't need to call you and sell you something. I think you should be really strategic about the data that you are bringing in. That way, whenever someone says, what data do you have on me? And you have things that you really don't need to know, it's not a good look. If the goal is to provide a better experience for the customer, it's good. If it's to give you another way to annoy them, not good. So a few ways that could manifest and would be my bank shooting me a text if suspicious behavior is taking place on my account. I'm really glad they have my information. Like I said, we know what misuse of my phone number looks like. It could be constant telemarketing or text messages from random numbers. Another way that the data could really serve to benefit the brand without creeping out their customer would be location data. Now that's very sensitive and something that really nobody likes, and for obvious reason. You go to the outlet mall and get a message that says, "Hey, I noticed you're here. Here's a coupon." And you're like, "Well, what else do you know about me? How long have you been following me around?" But if instead you use that data for analytical purposes and say, this person always comes to the outlet mall on the first weekend of the month, and that could be corroborated with transaction data. So there are a couple of ways to point to that. We'd probably be better served providing this coupon or this incentive to come in earlier in the week. That way it's a more gentle touch and really avoids that creepiness factor. So that's what I'll call pearl one, even though I don't think I'm smart enough to call anything that I say a pearl of wisdom. But bullet number two would be really to be open to new channels to add to your mix. There are going to be old channels that make an appearance, whether it's the old direct mail piece, email, things that were used and abused, and as a result, people moved away from. I think doing it correctly can bring people back. And just like I said, with the cold email or the cold call, that's something whenever it hits the right notes, somebody has done their research, you're willing to set up a call with them and hear what they have to say. I think as a result of using those channels, you're going to have to be open to testing, A/B test everything, whether it's the channel, the message, the creative. When you think you have a winning strategy, test it again. And the great thing about doing that is, aside from running a Super Bowl ad, most channels are pretty easy to get into and test with limited exposure on the cost. So I think that would be really where I would start and how I would address that question and be on the right side of history. It's always evolving, so continuing to stay in the loop, but I would say consider the channels that you're using, do a lot of testing, and be a good steward of the data, because customers aren't really impressed by how much data a brand has on them. It's what sort of experience they're providing as a result of having that data.
I love this idea of kind of everything old being new again, you know, as things continue to evolve, and now starting to think about the way that we target, and Blaine, you had mentioned really reconsidering the value of being able to target to the IP address or to target back to the home. It feels like it hits a little bit different, or it resonates a little bit different, given that all of us have spent a tremendous amount of time at home over the course of the last 12 months, you know, and it certainly makes me think a little bit differently about how I engage with these channels, be it the channels that I'm streaming, the shows that I'm watching, the ads that I'm being served, the change in the direct mail strategy that I think is visible and tangible for the consumer right now in their mailbox. I mean, things look and feel very different, and it wouldn't, I don't think that it would be like right now in this point of history if I didn't ask you each to provide a little bit of insight from your perspective or through your lens about the long-term effects that you think that the last year has had or will have on consumers regarding digital engagement, digital advertising. I'm very curious to how both of you have been thinking about it, and just generally what your thoughts are. Blaine, do you want to start us off, and then Aaron, feel respond.
So yeah, a few things that really we've seen change just in the last 18 months. I'm saying that because I don't know how time moves anymore with COVID, but 18 months feels safe. So I think really thinking about a business profile and a personal profile or consumer profile, those were always targeted separately. Like we have LinkedIn for this and we have Facebook for this. That's really kind of melded together into a single identity. And you think about the channels, my work email is open 10 hours a day, 16 hours a day if my boss is listening. And that's a great place to reach me because I am attentive to that. I want to make sure that work is going okay. And yeah, I'm open if you have a good message to send to me to receiving messages that are typically reserved for work. Same with the personal. If we have a work emergency come up, I'm open to hear something about that on my phone or even through personal email. So that's one of the big changes that I've seen is just kind of that blending of what was B2B data and B2C data. It's just single identity. Another thing, and we've been talking about connected TV just being this huge growth channel. And I think even more so with the events of the last 18 months, it's grown beyond even the most aggressive projections, being able to measure what's going on versus a linear advertisement. I think that has really been accelerated as a result of the last few months. And I've mentioned a couple more. I don't want to talk the whole time, but email's back. Everybody wants to communicate with email, and it's kind of blended with my first point, but day parting, trying to reach someone whenever you think they first show up to work at 8:30. That's less important because we're all on our own schedule because our work and home life have really blended together. So it gives you an opportunity to establish more of a personal touch based on what the person actually wants versus what we think person's ready to buy from me at 8:30 in the morning and no other time. It's kind of a shift in mindset.
Yeah, I think that we're all kind of thinking about what once was the separation between the personal life that we live and the professional life that we engage in, and how blurred the lines between those two things have become. I think that's great insight. Aaron, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I'd piggyback on one of the things Blaine said specifically about streaming TV.
Yeah.
A thing that I've really watched, just been fascinated by, has been the success of Disney Plus, and then other companies coming along and really showing how much focus they're putting on their streaming services. And that stands out to me as a forever change, just in a kind of qualitative way too. We have HBO Max, we have Peacock, we have Paramount Plus. Well, none of those are startups, right? Like, they can't run for decades on venture capital and debt. And what we've seen is how much it costs to run a streaming service and how much it costs to produce content for it. That threshold is higher than people are willing to pay. And so that means advertising is going to play a role in that streaming space more and more, as companies have to make these things pay for themselves and, hopefully turn a profit. So for me, the hope I have is that some of the scarcity we've seen in the availability of really premium OTT or CTV inventory, I think that scarcity will start to go away as some of these it's weird because they're newer entrants, but they're also old school companies. Like as their services scale and grow and really start to rely on advertising, we're going to see a lot of premium OTT inventory become available in nonlinear placements.
I know we're right at 12:45, and I know that we all have things to get back to. But before we wrap up, I would love to kind of ask both of you for resources. For anyone who's watching this is so much. This conversation is so much bigger than what we were able to tackle today. And obviously the two of you are really entrenched, and so certainly have, you're getting your information from somewhere. Do you have suggestions on anyone who wants to know more, wants to have more insight, or just kind of pick up on some of these themes or ideas before they hit the headlines? Any suggestions that you could make, people that you follow, things that you're reading right now? Blaine, can we start with you?
Yeah, I always say talk to Jbecca first and foremost. But
Thank you.
If they're not available, what I like to do is pop on to LinkedIn and really see what Aaron has to talk about, because he always does really good blogs, and they're in depth. And also have some more socially active colleagues at Stirista. If you're on LinkedIn for any minute of time and you're connected to one of us, you're going to see a ton of articles about the industry. We have really, really good research and a lot of smart people over here. Beyond that, really my favorite publication would be adexchanger.com. They always give quick snippets into topics, and then if you're so inclined, you can take a much deeper dive. There's usually really good links, and gives you a really good place to start to dive in. So those would be my top picks for the quick hitters.
I would add on your behalf, Blaine, that I've personally really enjoyed the Stirista podcast. I'm very much a podcaster, and that has brought me a lot of joy over the course of the past few months. So that too. And when it comes to Aaron, you can also follow him at ATGroat on Twitter. That's where I get a lot of my info from him. But Aaron, I'm sure that you have other resources that you can recommend.
Yeah, I second Blaine's Ad Exchanger recommendation. They're amazing. And Rebecca, they have two really great podcasts as well.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Let's see, Eric Seifert, who does Mobile Dev Memo, and Quantmar, like quantified marketing. I've really enjoyed and learned a lot from him recently. Otherwise, yeah, I've gotten a ton from Twitter. It takes a little bit of a time investment to find the people and follow them, and but the level of conversation that I found there has been really helpful. And the people actually building the things we rely on are very transparent and participatory about the way they work on Twitter. Examples of that would be like Eric Mill and Justin Shu on Chrome, and John Weilander on Safari. They're there, and they're talking to people, and they're sharing what they're doing, and it really helps to see a little bit over the horizon.
Thank you. And thank you both. I think that we've accomplished a little bit of that kind of seeing over the horizon today, and you're sharing your experience and your knowledge on the topic. And I appreciate your time, and I'm sure so does our audience. So thank you again for your time and for talking to us about the death and demise of the cookie.
Thanks for having.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to talk to you.
It's a lot of fun. I was going to say,
guys.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us. But yeah, I'm really